The acronym PFDD stands for Patient Focused Drug Development Meetings. So these are meetings that really focus on listening to and learning from patients and caregivers, both for people with rare diseases as well as for common diseases. Um, PFDD meetings officially are only conducted by the Food and Drug Administration, who originated PFDD meetings. And then in the last number of years, there's been something called an ELPFDD meeting, which is an externally led patient-focused drug development meeting. And those are conducted by patient advocacy organizations outside of the FDA with FDA support. Yeah, they originated, by the FDA. The FDA, as they were looking at their processes of reviewing new clinical trials as well as reviewing new drug applications coming to them, they realized that there was an important voice that was missing from the development of new drugs as well as to, when they were considering reviewing them. And this was the voice of patients, the people that would be the end users of drugs. They heard a lot from pharmaceutical companies, from physicians, from academic research, settings, from NIH. So that's where all the input on the design of trials was coming from. And they realized we really need to hear from patients and their caregivers about what matters to them. So they kind of did an experiment back in 2012. They designed these types of meetings called patient-focused drug development meetings, where it was a day devoted to listening to, asking questions to patients about what were the symptoms of their disease that they experienced and which of those symptoms impacted their lives the most. They wanted to know about the current, what kind of treatments do people use to try to treat the disease, and how effective are those treatments? Did they work a lot, just a little? What were the downsides of treatments? What kind of side effects did people experience, as well as things like burdens of treatments, like, having to go for injections or for IV infusions. And then they were wondering, what did people hope for in the future for new treatments? So as new things were coming down the line for their disease, what symptoms would be most important for the new drug or the new product to treat? So by asking these questions, they learned a lot, they listened. And then at the end of the day, they took a transcript from that meeting and wrote it up into a report called the Voice of the Patient Report. So this became a document that they put in the public domain. So anyone wanting to learn about the disease could read what patients and caregivers had said, but also the FDA review staff, when they were looking at maybe a new drug for that disease, they could go back to the Voice of the Patient Report and learn and revisit what is it that the patients had said when thinking about new treatments for their disease. When the FDA did the meetings, they wanted to make sure that they included both common diseases and rare diseases. Then when they turned this process over to the patient advocacy organizations, it seems like it's falling out that most of the externally led patient-focused drug development meetings are for rare diseases. These are diseases where, there's small numbers of patients. We don't understand always the natural history of the disease, and a lot of physicians have never even seen people with some of these diseases. So listening and learning from those communities is really critical and important. So, sometimes I think physicians and people that treat patients make assumptions about what's important to people or about what symptoms impact their lives the most. But, when I was participating in these meetings while I worked at the FDA in the Rare Diseases Program, we'd have physicians coming, to participate, or that they were in the audience listening. And after every single meeting, the physicians that I spoke with always said, boy, I really learned something at this meeting. So even though they were experts in the field, they didn't really understand sometimes how symptoms impacted people's lives. So that's one of the important outcomes. And then it's also, there's a qualitative aspect to it. When you ask someone, what impacts your life the most? The only people that can answer that are the patients and the caregivers themselves. We can't make any assumptions about that. So that's something we can only learn from them. And then as far as their perceptions about available therapies, Another place where we, learned from patients, as well as what their hopes were for the future and what symptoms they'd most like to see treated. So those are some of the different things that we learned. We always invite the FDA staff. So we work with, there's a patient-focused drug development staff at the FDA that continues to work with advocacy organizations. They help us get the word out about the meeting to the appropriate staff at the FDA that might be related to that particular disease. We invite regulated industry. We invite the greater patient community of that disease. We do as best as we can to get the word out to everyone. And then we also invite, family and friends, anyone who wants to learn about the disease. Sometimes a family has a affected member with a rare disease, and the people in their life don't really understand it. They don't get it, what's really going on. So watching one of these meetings, you really learn in depth about what it's like to live with the disease. Yeah, information from these meetings can lead to informing endpoints for future trials. Some of the diseases do have drugs already in development, so it can impact those development programs. It could also stimulate interest from maybe drug companies that were considering getting into the space and want to attend the meeting to learn about the disease. So and then groups are doing different things after the meeting's over. Some groups are having follow-on meetings where it's more of a scientific meeting to review what happened at the patient-focused drug development meeting, and then to start discussing how can that maybe impact future clinical trial designs and selection of endpoints for those trials, in the disease area, from using information from what we heard from the patients and caregivers.